I'm DaRon.
Oh, and today we're definitely going to rebuttal this TikTok video that's been going viral by everybody talking about whether we can go to space and all this other good shit.
And before we really get into it, I just want to quote Sam Harris, who I am actually not a fan of, believe it or not. Uh, However, there are things where he's definitely right, and this quote is perfect, I think, at least for this situation. If someone doesn't value evidence, what evidence are you going to provide to prove that they should value it? If someone doesn't value logic, what logical argument could you provide to show the importance of logic? I bring this up because that is what we are going to deal with here, unfortunately. That is, this individual doesn't, at least from what I'm seeing here, value logic, doesn't value evidence. She's mostly using tampered with evidence and things of that nature, and we'll get into that a little more as we go. But she has it so either, I mean, I'm going to go on good faith and believe that she actually believes the things she's saying, which I'm not sure she does. I don't know about you, but
I don't know if she does or not. A lot of times people do this shit for attention,
mm-hmm.
but because everybody is, it's you got some confused people,
Yeah,
people who believe this shit is real, and then people who's like, I'm not really sure. But nobody has actually came back with pure evidence to state that she's wrong. So, and until somebody actually comes back with their rebuttal with the evidence to prove her wrong, it won't really matter. And even if you do come back with evidence to prove her wrong, she's still going to continue doing what she's doing.
correct,
So
correct.
doesn't really matter. But the whole idea here and thought process here is to give everyone some logical thoughts or fruit for thoughts so that you understand what's true and what's not.
That's yes, that's exactly right, and I think that's one of the big things here is truthfully. Look, I'm under no illusion that we can provide any evidence that she is going to accept. Anything that we provide, she's going to throw away for one reason or another through logical fallacies and things of that nature. And not to get too far into it, but I know at one point she mentioned something about how an astronaut who allegedly went to the moon, allegedly according to her, is on video saying that he didn't. But that's actually not true. And as you know, Roniel, the video she was leaning on as her proof was doctored, and that tends to be the case with flat earthers. They tend to actually doctor heavily images and video from NASA and others and edit them so that it suits their purpose. But
Oh man, I can't wait for the astronauts in the water. So this is very interesting. But I want to say before we get started that this is by no means we're not disrespecting her, and we're not going to get into that whole thing that everybody's been going through with talking bad about her, talking down about her. I appreciate whatever content she is giving, but that doesn't mean it's real. That doesn't mean it's factual. So again, this video is not to disrespect her. This is just to give people some ideas on what's real and what's not. And that way you can take whatever we think, whatever you think, and make your own thoughts, come up with your own logical thoughts on it. I mean, or opinions.
The Bible, God also speaks about the four corners of the earth. A ball does not have corners.
neither does a circle.
Right. I mean, comparing a ball in a circle. Like, can I ask you a question? What is a ball, and what is a circle, and
Uh,
are they the same?
See, and that's where she gets. You know, the Earth isn't a circle, right?
I know.
And it's not a ball either. The Earth
No.
is actually an oblong spheroid, which
Yep.
which really means it doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like a ball. It's kind of like this, weird looking semi-circular smushed up thing, which is what you would expect given that the Earth at the core, of course, you have molten rock, But outside of that core, when you start moving toward the crust, you get this mucked up thing because it's been bombarded
Yeah,
with
yeah.
comments. And I do know, having watched most of this, I didn't see the whole thing one time. She, and we'll get to it a little later on, but she talks about how the moon and the sun are inside of this misbelieve structure, the dome that she's created, the dome that sits over it. But she actually contradicts herself quite a bit. And I
Uh,
walk away though
mhm.
going, where do comets and asteroids come from? I mean, do things just suddenly get created at the edge of the dome and like thrown across it? What's going on? Anyway, but
Oh man. So you literally have, because I had to prove, I have kept saying that she was contradicting herself
mhm,
multiple different
she
times,
does.
and especially about this dome, especially when she was saying that the moon was basically, what was she
Like
saying?
the
Was it
sun. She says it's a
like the
light.
sun?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a light, and it's not, it's not solid.
Right.
And that's my biggest problem. And then my thing is, okay, as we talked about, the earth is not really a ball
Right.
or any of that. So stating that most people who actually believe what she's saying, uh where, if we go back to the Big Bang Theory, okay, where did planets come from? And
Right.
she says that a star is not a star.
Right. Right.
So then what is a star and what is a planet? I mean, what is it? Where did planets come from? I mean,
Yeah.
if we understand this theory behind it, then I mean, I don't understand what she doesn't get. You know, I mean, and then, okay, I'm gonna wait till we get there because I have a
Yeah.
lot to say about a
Yeah.
lot of things, so we can wait till we get there.
Yeah. This is my fault. This is what happens. This is why I try
Yeah, you
not
go.
to watch these things ahead, because I mean, I'm listening to all of this stuff. I've already put it all together, and the whole thing's just irksome. But I will point out, and this goes back to something I mentioned earlier, having translated a lot of ancient texts, the phrases similar to the four corners of the earth are used all over the place in ancient texts, and they don't mean what she thinks they mean because they didn't have that concept. Like, they would sit there and say to the Romans conquered all of the earth. I don't know if you knew this, but this is how the
Yep.
Romans saw it.
Yep.
And what they meant wasn't they literally conquered all the earth, because they were well aware of the Nordic people. They were well aware of the sub-Saharan African people. They were well aware of actually Chinese people, for example. In fact, there are a lot of Roman coins in Okinawa. They found massive treasure troves of Roman coins in Okinawa, which is an island in the middle of the Pacific. I say the middle. See, this goes exactly what I'm saying. Now,
Yep.
obviously, Okinawa is not in the middle of the Pacific. And
Right.
she would, if that were written in text, she'd take it and say, see, Okinawa can't be here. Okinawa has to be there. This is the problem. We speak loosely. And I don't mean to say that the Bible is written loosely or translated loosely, but I mean to say, by using these phrases, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
100 years later, people won't have that same context. They won't understand what I'm saying. This is what's going on here. Four corners of the earth. The Romans took over all of the world as far as they were concerned. And when they used that phrase, what they were really talking about was they took over the parts that they cared about. The parts that were
The
worth
main
it.
parts.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly right. And the
And there
Mediterranean was the world to them because that's the only thing that mattered.
and it what they're stating here is not literal because, as you
Yes.
said, it's loose. So
Yes.
the four corners could mean anything. I could say the four different hemispheres.
Right.
Like, does that mean anything? That's just my term of what I believe. And that's not a literal thing. And there's no proof that there are four corners. So you know,
There aren't. See, and that's the big thing. When I look at a map, right? A map, be it a rectangle, be it a square, and you would ask, well, why are we limiting ourselves to rectangles and squares? Because let's be honest, that's how most paper or what have you, most of the things that we wrote on and still write on to this day are rectangles and squares. It's a little weird for us to write on a circle. Does it happen? Yeah, there are cards you can get that are circles. So oftentimes when I talk four corners, I mean of the current known map or what have you. This is taking something that's not meant to be taken literally and taking it literally. And she may go through and say, but you have to read the Bible literally. The problem with that is I can give passage after passage after passage where if you read it literally, there would be no way you could make it work. For example, Adam and Eve allegedly are the first humans on earth. This is a literal translation. They're the only humans on earth. They go off and they have kids, right? They then enter into a city. Well, how did this city come to be? How is it that Adam and Eve's kids got married if they were the only people on earth and those are the only children that Adam and Eve had and they're documented in the Bible? So where did these other people come from? And this is the problem with this. We have to take it all literally. Where did these other people come from? Now you have to make the leap of faith and say, well, God just didn't enumerate all the other people. He just created them after. But you said you were going to take it literally. And she's going to get into this a little later where she talks about how, oh, well, if Mars and Venus existed, then it would be in the Bible. It would say that he created Mars and Venus. Well, he didn't say he created the cities either. He just said, lo and behold, Adam and Eve suddenly, they have kids and their kids suddenly find people who aren't their kids, marry them in a city that isn't full of their kids, and then, do their thing. So obviously she has to admit she takes liberties with it.
Okay, let's just go to this. You made a good point. God said he created the heaven and earth. So did that mean he didn't create anything else?
Right. Just
I mean,
stop.
did that mean he didn't create the stars, the moon? I mean, he created everything. God created everything there is. He doesn't have to state, oh, Venus, this
Right.
and that. God created everything.
And that's
And
what that
even-
phrase meant.
Yes. And I don't think she understands that. And that's why I was like, he said he created the heaven and earth. That's everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And to state that because he didn't mention it, that he didn't create, that it wasn't created, and that there's no such thing as outer space, that is a fallacy. That is stupid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Where did the Nephilim come from? It doesn't say he created the Nephilim. It doesn't say that he created half of the stuff that you see appear almost immediately in Genesis right out of the gate. Because it's assumed. Come on.
Yeah, that goes back to people understanding what they're reading in the writing. Like, it's assumed that you understand if he created the heaven and the earth, moon, all of those things that he states in there, he created everything. That's what he states in Genesis, that God created the heavens, the earth, everything, the hell, all of that. He created all of these things. So it's assumed that you know that he created everything else.
That's actually, that's good. It doesn't say he created hell either, does it?
Yeah, no.
Did it just magically appear?
Right. That's what I'm saying. And that's what people need to understand. It doesn't even state that, but it's there.
Yeah.
So and if you get deeper into the Bible, when he starts talking about hell, you understand why it was created.
Yeah. So long story short, she says, oh, well, a sphere, a ball. She said ball. I'll go with sphere. Doesn't have a corner. Doesn't have any corners. And she's right, but neither does a circle. She artificially created corners in this, and I could take a sphere and I can create artificial corners in it too. I mean, I could easily etch the same exact thing, quadrants, all over a ball, a sphere, and give it corners. So this is immaterial and absolutely silly. In fact, actually, if I were to look at a basketball and, you look at hell, basketballs do this all over the place now, don't they?
Yeah.
I was going to say, and I'd look at the stem and cut two lines, but basketballs have the lines already. So
they already have it, yeah.
I mean, this is the mental gymnastics going on are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But a flat surface do. Now, when I say four corners of the earth, this is what I mean. The same way that man made a compass, a circle compass, and put north, east, south, and west, I'm speaking of exactly that.
Except that's not the diagram she showed, because when you look at a compass, the way it went, north is here, south is here, east and west. So I don't. She's doing some weird stuff. This stuff doesn't make any logical sense at all. This is terrible. Now, I mean, they didn't even have compasses back then, by the way. Compasses are actually
I
a
know.
relatively new invention. And this goes exactly to what I was saying. When you translate, you try to take an idea and then you try to say, okay, well, what is an idea that my reader is going to understand? Compass. Oh, there we go. I'm going with compass.
It's like navigation,
Mm-hmm.
navigating, you know, and I don't think people understand that. Like, you have to understand what is being stated here. And you and I know there wasn't a compass back in the day, which is why when she states that there's, again, I'm just going to go back to this reference, that there's no space, or there was none of these different planets. How were they able to find out what of these planets were out there? But
Right.
did they have the technology to know back then that there was Venus and Jupiter and Saturn? Did they know that? You know, people are writing what they see, hear,
Right.
feel from God, but you're stating that God didn't create this. How would they have known that?
Right.
It's assumed again that God created everything. So, like, none of this technology is there back then. So the state that, oh yeah, you know, there was a compass. You don't even know what you're talking about, which makes whatever you're saying afterwards false.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't understand what you're reading. So because you don't understand it, now everything else is false. We don't even have to make a point on it, because we know you don't know what you're actually reading.
Maybe she's going to come back and say, "Oh, but this is clear evidence that compasses existed back then." I don't know, which would be just the most ridiculous idea, because the only way you could get away with that would be claiming that they're conspiracy theories. And oh, by the way, how did the Hebrews get lost in the desert if they had a compass?
Yeah, God had to guide. I mean, you know, and back then they had different ways to tell where they were going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there was no such thing as compass, and they would look at the stars, which he says
Yes.
is not real, to know
Right.
where north, east, west, and south were. You know, like
See, this is where when you decide to take and do logical fallacy after logical fallacy, you could get really nutty by saying, "Oh, well, God confused them because stars aren't real. They don't really exist. They're just, figments of your imagination or something that God puts up." So God confused the Hebrews by rearranging the stars every night. I mean, I'm sure someone can do some crazy mental gymnastics to make that one work, but you have to be trying. You really have to be trying. And I don't think you could believe it at that point. I think at that point that what you're saying is wrong, but you're just not going to admit it.
Yeah.
God also says in the Bible that he set a compass upon the face of the earth. Now, remember
Actually,
when I said that God made the earth as a compass? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk.
This compass is wrong.
It's hard to see, but it definitely is.
It's weird. So I'm looking at it. What in the world are these? Oh, the east and west. Okay, so if I'm, I wish I could make this better for you. But okay, so looking at this, we have at the top of this circle, south. At the right end, we have south. At the bottom, we have south, and then at the left end we have south, and then she has these arrows, and the arrows are, this arrow says east, it's pointing east, and this one says west. So according to this diagram she's showing here, if I am sitting, let's say I'm sitting here, so on this tip of Africa, if I'm sitting here, this is what, Ghana-ish? This is like Ghana, thereabout, anyway. Yeah. If I want to go east, then I go this way. If I want to go west, I go this way. I mean, this is the weirdest drawing ever, because This is silly. This is bad. This is one of those that I think would confuse people more than anything. Confuses me.
No, I don't. I want to know where she got the diagram from.
I want to know where she got it from too.
Think about it. Now the compass only recognizes north. North always points towards the center.
She's talking about a magnetic compass. A magnetic
Mhm.
compass only recognizes north. And it
Yeah,
actually doesn't even point north. It points magnetic north, which isn't the same as actual north. It's close,
yeah,
but not
yeah,
quite. So,
yeah.
I mean, we could have just as easily come up with something that pointed you south or east or west all the time. But that's just, I mean, we were using magnets. That's all a compass. That's all the compass she's referring to does is use magnetism. And, you know, magnetic poles being such as they are, it's going to point north-south at all times. Actually, it's wrong to say it points north. It actually points north-south at all times because, of course, as we know, with magnetism, you have a positive and you have a negative. She's actually wrong. It points north-south at all times. And that's magnetic north-south, which isn't the actual north-south. But
You know she's gonna rebuttal that. What the hell is magnetic north-south or north? You know, you gotta let her understand what, or make her understand what that is, DaRon. You can't tell her magnetic north. She's
she's
not gonna understand
so she is going to mention something at some point about the magnetic field where she has a picture, and we'll discuss it a little more there because she's wrong about what the magnetic field looks like. We actually can see and we know what the magnetic field is, and this is why you get the north south. So if I were to take the earth, and let's say the earth were pointing straight up, as we know, of course, the earth is rotating on an axis and it's tilting right back and forth, just like a ball that happens to be spinning and it has a slight spin. You can see this all the time. It's not like a dreidel or you know, a spinning top. It's really just a ball, like if you play billiards, right? If I hit a billiard ball right, I can watch it spin and it does the same exact thing if I hit it really hard. So the earth is going like this. So if I have it like this, which it isn't. The magnetic poles are going like this. So we're going, because I have a magnetic pole here and here because we have a positive and a negative. So it's called magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is actually a big bulbous thing, and it looks like this on the front end. And it gets smushed in and expands out based on solar radiation. So the shape of it, differs a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, it's a semicircle connecting from the magnetic north pole to the magnetic south pole. And then on the back end, this is where it gets really weird because imagine we're gonna go to Dragon Ball Z here. You know, when they do
yeah,
Kamehameha or whatever, and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing that thing. So if I'm a circle and I'm getting blasted by solar radiation like this, that's going to smush, like I said, the magnetosphere in the front, and then in the back, just like if we were to look at a wind tunnel, you get this weird shape for the magnetosphere in the back. But anyway, yeah. So sorry, I
That's
jumped
the
ahead.
reason why the Earth looks round. Is because the magnet. I mean, it doesn't. It's not round, but you have that magnetic force field around it, right?
You have the magnetic force field. You have the propensity of everything pulled in by gravity, and then of course you have that water. And water,
Yep.
were there not water, if in fact actually there are pictures of the Earth without water, and it
Yeah.
looks weird. But that water, because it's because it's spinning, and because of course the molten core and all of that stuff, which is what creates the magnetosphere. So to your
Yeah.
point, all of that comes together to cause gravity to pull everything in equally. And this is why if I take a bowling ball and I drop it, it falls at the same rate as if I take a feather and drop it, or a pencil. So a bowling ball isn't going to fall faster than a pencil. It's just how this
That's
works.
right. Which is
Obviously, you have to eliminate air resistance and stuff caused by the shape of the object, but
this is another thing that kind of kicks the flat earther people in the ass because with gravity, and people think, oh well, if we were round, which we're not technically, but if we were round, we would fall off.
Right.
And I'm like, but you have gravity and all of these different things, these things together, combined together, happening that keeps us
Right.
on Earth.
Right.
So that's just the number one thing I think people don't think about: gravity itself.
And yes, keep going. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, just even if you don't count in all of these other things, but gravity will not allow you to go anywhere. So it's not like we're on the moon where we have no gravity or out in space. But if you think about that, why things are not falling? I mean, we're spinning at a certain rate. So that's another thing. And then you have, gravity keeping us here. So wouldn't that make sense on why we're not falling off Earth? I'm not saying there's other things that has evolved. I mean, had to deal with this whole idea, but it's just the fact of just gravity alone for me. Just like if you understand that, you know why the hell we're not falling off of Earth.
Right. You're exactly right. Gravity is what keeps us here. And that is why as you move further and further away from the core, now you start to float. But if I go deeper and deeper underwater, yes, we have the crush depth that,
Yep.
caused by all the water pressure. Well, you wouldn't have water pressure where they're not gravity.
Yep.
But that's also why, and I saw a meme earlier that said, oh, well, if the Earth were rotating, then if this helicopter just sat here, eventually it would basically circumnavigate the Earth because the Earth would keep moving underneath it. But what they're failing to recognize is that helicopter was all of 20 feet off the ground. In order to actually see the effect, and this does happen. In fact, we have talked about it numerous times. NASA has discussed it. Artillery shells. There are artillery shells that do this. Intercontinental ballistic missiles do this. You know what they do? They go up so high, the Earth is spinning underneath them, and now they come back down. So they moved further faster just by going high enough. And then when they come down, literally a 2-minute flight, a little longer than a 2-minute flight, but let's say a 20-minute flight can move them all the way hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles without exhausting the same amount of fuel just because they went straight up. That's also why a lot of times your aircraft will fly near the North Pole. If you're in the northern hemisphere, they'll fly near the North Pole and use the curvature of the Earth to shorten the distance if you're going intercontinental.
Makes sense.
Hint, the North Pole. Any other direction is only based off the direction of north. How could a compass point south on a globe if they are saying that south is downwards?
Again, compasses point simultaneously north and south. We just put a little arrow on one side so that people don't get confused.
Yeah,
Although
I
there are
noticed
compasses that have the arrow on both sides.
Yeah, because I know there's some that have them on both sides.
Mhm.
So I mean, I don't understand what she's stating.
She's probably only seen one kind of compass, actually, based on what she
I've
said.
seen them both. I actually had multiple different compasses, but like I said, they're normally pointing up, but both the ones that are both they are north and south.
Yeah. What she's constantly forgetting or ignoring is the fact that magnetism is a dipole. It's not monopole.
Yeah.
East and west are curved lines that constantly readjust to align with north.
East and west aren't actually curved lines, but no more than north and south. I mean, if you're drawing a line,
constantly readjust to align with north. So y'all question is, how come when I'm flying in a plane, I end up in the same place I came from? Well, that only happens with east and west. So if you say that you circled the whole world and ended up in the same place, that's because you were going east and west.
It's actually not true. You could do it north to south. There's just not any point because that takes a lot more. There's no point. The distance is ridiculous. Why would you do that? Because again, the Earth is not a ball. If I were doing a ball, then from this point on the Earth, let's say I were at the equator, which of course is the middle, I could pick any point in the equator, and it would be equidistant going north to south or east to west. But that's not actually the case with the Earth. You would blow a lot of fuel, and where are you going to refuel over the North Pole or the South Pole? Unless you have a refueler flying around. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I don't know how much fuel she thinks that these aircraft have. And the other reason why they don't do that is, of course, going east to west. I can take advantage of the fact that the Earth is spinning, and I can also take advantage of the jet stream. What she probably doesn't know is the jet stream at different elevations is actually very different. And to the point where they can be shearing, where you can get them going across each other at different elevations. Again, she probably doesn't know that, but that's actually why they go east to west. It wouldn't make sense to go north and south. You would spend the whole time exerting a lot of fuel. There's nowhere to refuel once you get to a certain point, either north or south. And on top of that, it doesn't let them take advantage of using the jet stream to make them go faster, or using the fact that the Earth is spinning like this. The Earth doesn't spin like this. If the Earth spun north to south, then that would actually make a little more sense. But if the Earth spun north to south, the jet stream, in fact, the winds, so the wind comes from the west and goes to the east, generally. The only time that doesn't occur is if you have a storm coming through, or if you have a body of water and land such that the either one or the other causes the difference in pressure to cause the wind to go north to south. That's why, of course, winds blow off of our lake, and then they also blow toward the lake, depending on the water temperature versus the land temperature. So as that land heats up, the water is going to heat up less quickly. And that's going to mean that you're going to get a pressure difference that's going to pull the air one way versus the other when the night hits and the land's cooling down much faster than the water, because it's a big body of water. Now the air is going to go in the opposite direction. So she's confused about a lot of things. Unfortunately, what we really have here is an extreme lack of scientific knowledge, but even aviator knowledge and understanding. You certainly could go north to south. You could, but what's the point? You're not taking advantage of the Earth's rotation. You have nothing going for you. The wind's not going to help push you faster. That's why flights going from the west back to the east, flights going east are always faster, and they're always faster simply because of the jet stream. So it's crazy, man.
But let me tell you something. Traveling south is a whole different ballgame. See, because south is any direction leaving the center. See, because if you begin to head south, you will reach the Antarctica ice wall.
There isn't one ice wall. I don't know where she got this picture from. That doesn't exist. The one on the left. This doesn't exist. I don't know who's making these pictures for her, or where she's stealing them from. I guess it's probably some flat earther stuff. But there isn't an Antarctica ice wall. There are many Antarctic ice walls. I'm not sure she knows what an ice wall is. If I remember correctly, I think something like 38% of Antarctica is covered by ice wall. This is a nice, beautiful. This actually looks like an ice sheet, not an ice wall in the top right, because it's in the water.
I was about to say it looked like a sheet more than a wall.
Yeah.
So traveling south, you will never end up back at the same place.
That's inaccurate.
Because there's a reason they won't allow y'all to travel south and end up at the ice wall.
I travel south all the time. How does she think we go from northern United States to southern United States? I travel south.
Yeah,
I see. This goes back to what we were saying about you can't take something literally. I understand what she's saying. What she's saying is you can't go to the Antarctic, but you actually can. You can today go through. Now they mostly operate from, I think, October until February, because it's the opposite, right? When I lived in Okinawa, for example, spring is when it's fall here in the northern hemisphere, and winter in Okinawa is summer here in the northern hemisphere. So if you're traveling to Antarctica, you don't want to go there when it's winter there because it's very cold, very windy. It's just an unpleasant place to be. It's very cold. But they do expeditions to the South Pole regularly, and you can actually pay to do it or be part of a team that does it. And you can see the pole, and they have a neat little, they have a bunch of markers there, but they also have some neat little buildings and things of that nature there. So she's wrong, unless she's going to then claim that there's a big giant conspiracy and that that's all fake. But the truth is, if you create or get your own private rocket, you could do this yourself. I will also point out the problem with what she's saying is she's describing the Earth as being flat north to south. And I guess not east to west? I don't even know.
What she was stating, as you go a little further, she states that it's the Arctic wall is all around. That's north, south, and east and west. So it goes all around, and that's what we was having this conversation before when she was stating it's a flat Earth, and you have the Arctic wall around, then you have this globe thing over it, and that's what this is basically on the left is trying to state, and that we can't go anywhere. We're pretty much stuck. We can't go because there's a wall around everything, and that's not true.
Wouldn't that mean that you couldn't go east to west all the way around the
Right.
Earth?
That's right. That would be factual. You couldn't do any of that, and that's why it makes no fucking sense because that is what she's trying to state, that the Arctic wall is all around. And
I see. So that's what
Yep.
that picture is.
uh-huh.
I see. Yeah, then you couldn't go east to west. You couldn't go north to south. You couldn't circumnavigate the globe unless you were teleported. And that doesn't make any sense.
And that's what the flat Earth theory is that, you have this globe around that we can't get out to outer space. And then you can't get out you can't really go anywhere because there's an Arctic wall around there. So you can't, if you stated you went here, you didn't really go there because you can't get past the wall. And that's stupid. that is insane. So that's what that is supposed to be stating.
That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. I didn't know that that's how. I just assumed that they thought there was like an edge, but I didn't realize it. But here's the thing. Okay, so we have known forever that the Earth is round. In fact, the Greeks knew the Earth was round, and the Greeks got really damn close to, considering they were doing it all by hand, to actually accurately figuring out the circumference of the Earth. This was many, many thousands of years ago, by the way. Anyway, so any sailor will tell you the Earth is round if they've ever been on an actual ship, not a boat, but a ship. Because if you go and you look from, in fact, actually, if you've ever been to a skyscraper, you can do the same thing. If I'm at ground level, assume that there are no trees, no hills, or anything. If the Earth were flat, I would see the same distance as if I went to the top of a ship, to the crow's nest, so very high up in the mast. But that's not how it works. And that's why if you ever look at the old World War I and even the World War II ships, the battleships, destroyers, things of that nature, you'd see these really funny metallic structures that go really high up. That was because every sailor knows the higher up I can get it, the further out I can see. So I can take maybe what's originally a 40-mile a 40-mile range. I go up higher, maybe 40 feet, and suddenly I can see 100 miles. Any artilleryman knows the Earth is round. Anyone who's ever been on an airplane knows the Earth is round, because if you do any of those things, you can actually see the curvature. You can see the Earth curve, and you can see it curve in all directions. If I'm in the middle of the Pacific, I can't tell where I am if there are no stars, and if we ignore that you can tell based on the sun. I can't tell where I am just looking at the curvature of the Earth, because it's going to look the same amount of curved no matter what way I look. I mean, maybe they say the Earth is slightly curved. I don't know. But But based on the curvature that you can see, looking at it from a distance of, from 10 feet off to 40 feet off, I can actually calculate how curved the Earth is because I've created a triangle, right? So my vantage point here, and now I see the vantage point up there. I can actually see based on the angle, and that tells me what the Earth's curvature is. This kind of stuff is how the Greeks and the Romans, etc., 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 figured all of this stuff out. This is not
Basic geometry.
yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And that's why this stuff was created, because as an archer, as an artilleryman, the further out I go, I need to account for the Earth being curved.
Yeah.
Like, bruh, come on. Even the compass don't want you traveling south. That's why it always points back to north.
This actually sounds racist the way she's saying it.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you're picking up on it, but I'm listening to it and I'm going, it almost sounds like you're saying that everyone wants to go north and that, people in the south, and if we were talking continentally, say Africa, which is in the south, or South America, which is in the south, are somehow lesser than. It's just the vibe. The way she's saying it, that's the vibe I'm getting. I'm like, this is weird.
No,
I don't want to travel south though, but that's for a different reason.
Yeah, if you haven't watched the other video about him traveling south. Interesting.
Yeah.
Telling you to turn around every time you start to travel south. See, because if you decide to keep going and get past that ice wall, you will realize there is, in fact, a firmament over us.
This goes back, okay, so this is in which she's going to get deeper into it, but this whole firmament thing that we're scraping, this glass bowl or globe or whatever, as we talked about before, how the hell did we get
Yeah.
outer space if there's a firmament or this glass bowl around it and we're just scraping it? Like if we were scraping this glass, right, and we what is the temperament of it that is it that hard that eventually we're not going to scrape it in the water? Because she states further down that that's how God flooded the earth.
Really?
Yes, and through this firmament, and I'm like, so if we somehow keep scraping this, eventually it's going to break.
Right. All
And
that water pressure.
so how come we haven't drowned or flooded yet? I mean, how come we've been out of space? We've seen these things. I mean, we have literally, this was my whole thing is we have satellites, right? And satellites are not small, right? I mean, I guess you said some
You
of
can
them are
see
small,
some
but
of them. You can see
right,
the ISS, the International Space Station, actually.
right. So you can see this stuff, but this is huge, right? And my thing is, if you're stating that all of this is in this firmament, right? We can't get out. I mean, you could see it, but I mean, you clearly, this thing would be humongous in the sky right now, not far away from a far distance. We're talking about this big ass space station,
Yeah.
and like in the sky, and that's what I just don't understand the logic here. If
Yeah.
we're in, how the hell did we get out there? How the hell did we send satellite? We use satellites and stuff every day. That's how we get GPS and
Yeah.
internets and different things. Like we're using it. It's outer space. So if there was a firmament there and all of these things that we created and pushed out and went out of space, wouldn't it be right in our faces right now? And then another thing, how the hell did aliens, if this whole alien thing on it, how the hell did aliens get past the firmament?
Does she talk about aliens too?
I don't even know if she'd say I think it's another video, but
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just stating that aliens, this whole firmament thing just got me just worked up because I'm like, how is all of these conspiracy theories happening if there's this ball around us protecting us from nothing can get in or out?
So a question I've always sat there and said is, where people get, All right, if we didn't go to the moon, do you honestly think that the USSR, which was our rival at the time, would not have put out tons of material saying that we never went to the moon, and would not have proven to the world that we didn't go to the moon? Because they had every impetus, every reason to call us on our lie if we made up the whole landing on the moon thing. It even from an international conspiracy perspective, it wouldn't make sense for them to do anything else, and it certainly wouldn't make sense for Russia to admit that they failed just recently to land their craft on the moon, and that instead it got destroyed. It wouldn't make sense for India to magically join us in this charade and say, look, we got on the moon and all of this other. I don't understand. Like I said, the hoops that you have to run through, the logical fallacies you have to run through to do all of this are insane. Absolutely insane. It makes absolutely no sense.
It's just crazy that when you think about some of the things that's being said, and you think logically about everything that's going on and things that you have seen.
Right.
I mean, things that you can feel, touch, and see. What she's stating makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and at this point, what with air travel, I just want to point out, an ice wall wouldn't stop us. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like we're on foot going, oh damn, there's a wall, I can't go up. No.
You can literally go over the ice wall.
By the way, some of the satellites actually go. You have goes east and goes west, but you also have satellites that circumnavigate by going north to south. And the reason why they picked their different orbits because of what they're trying to get. So if I have it going west to east, I can keep it in the same location so that it's always fixated on this part of the United States, for example. And that's why when we look at some of the weather satellites, that's typically what we're looking at. Whereas some of them go like this because they have a different goal. And then some are further out, so they're outside of they're less affected by Earth's rotation. They're still rotating. They still want them in orbit. It's just further out in orbit so that Earth rotates faster, and that lets them, your spy satellites will do that. So some of them, they have different ones for different purposes, but that lets the Earth fly by, and it means that for, say, a certain period of time, I can launch a satellite that sees Russia and China and can spy on Russia and China, North Korea, whatever, or if you're the Chinese, that can spy on the United States and Europe and all of that good stuff for at least a period of time. I can't have it sit there all the time because the Earth is a spheroid, and if I had it sit there all the time, radio waves being such as they are, I would never get any communication from that satellite. Not without, communicating across satellites. And that's part of the reason why you want the Earth to spin so that that satellite sitting out there spying on the Russians or doing its thing can do its thing, and I can still get communication. Now, we aren't as tethered as we were back in the 1960s when a lot of this stuff was really going off. So now the communication can travel between satellites. But that's the historical reason why the satellites did what they did, and that's also part of the reason why the window for getting pictures from Russia, for example, back then from a satellite was actually very small, and that's why we would fly aircraft like the U-2 later on over to do spying, espionage.
That makes sense.
This Earth. We couldn't be living in a globe if we wanted to. See, water has to be contained. They say that the Earth is 71% water, so that by itself would be impossible. And I know y'all probably be wondering, where do rainbows come from? Scientists will tell you they self. To make a rainbow, you need water, light, and a mirror.
What? You don't need a mirror. Here's what you need. You need light, and you need water, and then I just need to shine, but I need water in a vapor form, and I just need to shine the light through the water vapor. And that's exactly what a rainbow is. It's light reflecting and refracting off of water vapor. I've never heard anyone talk about using water, light, and a mirror to create a rainbow. I can actually create a rainbow just using glass, and reflecting light through glass, that's how they figured out the different light spectrums. You take a
Right.
prism, run light through it. I mean, I know you know this, but
Yep.
I I guess I'm a little confused here because she's confused, and I don't know where this mirror thing came from.
Well, I mean, isn't a lot of the community confused?
Yes.
When God said he created the firmament, he spreaded it out like a molten looking glass.
Here's again, she does not understand what that means.
Oh, she doesn't. She really doesn't. And
And she's using this to make it seem like he's stating that it's glass.
see, but this is what so many people will do when they actually, either one, they don't know their Bible, or two, they are abusing the Bible to control people, etc., etc. She's cherry picking like mad, trying to find phrases that kind of, sort of, maybe if you look at it just right, tilt your head and then let your brain fall out, uh, make her argument. And I can easily, this is a problem with cherry picking, I can find you tons of quotes throughout the Bible that would make you think that a lot of things that it says you shouldn't do are in fact good. I don't, I mean, you see this with sound bites with politicians. They'll go through and take a snippet of something someone's saying. See, this person's the devil. Well, how do I know they're the devil? Because they said this, this, and this. She's doing the same thing. This is the wrong way of proving her point. Give us the context. If you want to actually prove this, I want you to give us the whole context, because what she's claiming will fall apart in its context. Especially because at that point you can actually see, okay, this isn't what was intended. This isn't what they were talking about.
I agree. Context is very important, especially when you're trying to translate things like this.
See them big rainbows that you see is proof that we live underneath a firmament.
Oh my God.
But she's literally going through and showing just what we were talking about. She has a prism.
Yeah.
She has light coming through a prism, and maybe she thought this was a mirror. Maybe she thinks the prism is a mirror. The prism is not a mirror.
It's not. And it's kind of making me think that she think that this prism is glass.
Yeah.
And that this is what we live in, even though this is not.
I see what you're saying. She's thinking the
Yeah.
prism is basically this hollow thing.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, and that's why. Like, what other reason would she show this? This would not make any sense.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And this is where you get the whole slit. A lot of the slit experiments and things of that nature was spawned from all of this. This is phenomenal science. I wish you weren't abusing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Rainbows that you see is proof that we live underneath a firmament. It's the sunlight reflecting off of the firmament.
It's not the sunlight reflecting off of the firmament yet. Okay, she says it a little later on, I believe. But she says you can't fly. She says you can't fly over a rainbow, or you can't go over a rainbow, or something to that effect. Or I guess maybe there she implied it anyway. The problem is, if a rainbow were the light reflecting off of the firmament, then you couldn't fly over it. But anyone who's ever flown for a substantial amount of time knows you can actually fly over rainbows. There are videos of it. I've done it. It's actually pretty, I mean, I can't actually see rainbows very well because I don't see color. But I can see them much better when I'm flying over it. I cannot see them when I'm looking at it this way because I can't see the, I guess it's yellow. And things of that nature, the yellows and blues, because it looks the same as the back. But the point being, I have actually seen a rainbow flying over it. Many other people have. She could too if she wanted to. So, but yeah, it can't be light reflecting. If it were light reflecting, then anyone, first of all, no one could fly over a rainbow. But let's say she comes up with some kind of scenario where you could fly over a rainbow. If it were light reflecting, then if I went over a rainbow and flew over it like this, then I would have the rainbow disappear in the shape of whatever it is that's flying over it. And that's not what happens at all.
Earth on its foundations so that it should never be moved. But scientists are saying that we are spinning and moving 1,040 miles per hour. And in 1927, we had
That
no
is
idea what the Earth looked
totally
like.
wrong.
But
When if you read what, especially when he said it should never be moved, that just the moved, that is not the same thing as moving,
Right.
and that is not what it's stating.
Right.
So she's going around about this rotation, like that is not what that is stating.
Yeah.
Th-
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
goes this goes back to understanding what you're reading, and she's taking it literally or literal, but also she doesn't, I mean, moved.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense there? Moved
Yeah. Yeah. You're
versus
exactly right.
moving.
Yeah, she doesn't. She's actually taking great liberty with what she's reading, and it is frustrating to me as someone who has, like you. I've read the Bible actually many, many, many times. At last count, it was 14 different times, all the way through, front to back. I've read it in many different versions. I've read it in, although it was a long time ago, Greek. I read much of it in ancient Greek. She has no clue what she's talking about. She's no clue what she's talking about.
Okay, so good thing. Has Earth, I mean, I'm not talking about its rotation of its, and even of its axis. Has it ever moved out from where we're at in space?
Okay, so the Earth actually does move slightly closer and slightly further from the sun because the orbits, when actually this is a good question because this is exactly she shows these drawings and you can't take them literally. When you look at the orbits from a drawing of the solar system, first of all, the orbit isn't a circle, it's more of an ellipse. But
Yeah.
but importantly, it varies over time. And maybe this is where you're going. If the Earth, at least under our current understanding, if the Earth moves too far away from the sun, it would cause an ice age and all of these other things. If it goes too close to the sun, then we would look just like Mercury and be molten.
And that's why I'm stating when it says foundation, it can't be moved. Have we seen any time so far that it has moved further? I mean, we talking about further away from the sun. Obviously, everything was put in its place for a reason. All right, and that's what I take from that. I mean, you can look at it in multiple ways, but God set the foundation so it couldn't be moved. But there's different ways you can look at that. But I'm just stating that if she's stating that it's we don't rotate, that's false. I mean, we have to. There's scientific proof on why and the reason why. And then to look at that sentence, and I don't know how you would take it, but to look at that, this God saying He built the foundation so Earth cannot be moved. Has it ever moved anywhere further from where we are now?
Yeah.
Like, is it closer to Jupiter?
Yeah. Yeah. See, I mean, I guess to your point, if we move drastically in any direction, either closer or further from the sun, we would have a problem.
Yeah. And I'm just wanting to state so people understand what they're reading. Like, the biggest thing here to me is moved,
Yeah.
not moving. Just as you stated, the
Yeah.
difference between words.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how she's putting moved and us moving. Our Earth is rotating with God set the foundation, so Earth can't be moved.
Yeah. 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 She's taking great liberties with what she's reading, and she's taking great liberties cherry picking the way she is. She's pulling everything straight. This is terrible. I certainly hope this is terrible.
miles per hour. And in 1927, we had no idea what the Earth looked like.
Where's that claim coming from?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
We were well aware how the Earth looked like. We'd circumnavigated the globe. At that point, you can find maps from before 1927 that are exactly the way you would think it would be. It's crazy. I don't know. Maybe she's thinking, oh, well, we couldn't have known because we hadn't gone into space. But if that's the claim, then we couldn't know even now if she's claiming we haven't gone out into space.
But I don't understand how the 1927 and 1999, I mean 1997, what's the difference? I mean, of course, this is a motion picture thing, but she's stating that we had no idea what the Earth looked like.
Yeah, I don't know where that
I
comes
mean,
from.
I'm not saying these are totally identical because this is just this is a concept, an abstract of art, like, but it's not directly, the details are not the same, but that doesn't mean we don't know what it is. To me, it looks like we have a clear idea of what the Earth may look like between these pictures. It makes no sense.
So I think the claim here, and this is really to your point, I think the claim here is that since we hadn't gone into space, we allegedly couldn't have known what the Earth looked like. So the fact that these two look so similar is proof that the one on the right is made up and it's just a modern rendition of, as you say, that's a motion picture. It's Universal Pictures' little thing. And I saw that many times when I was growing up. I know exactly where that's coming from. But the problem is we had fantastic cartography since before 1927. And we had explorers. That's what Lewis and Clark were doing across the United States, was cartography, mapping out the United States and actually creating a very solid map of what our continent looked like, what North America, specifically actually the United States, looked like. So this is all very, very silly because it's completely illogical. This assumes that we didn't have cartography. The Greeks, again, the Greeks and Romans knew the earth was round. The Greeks and Romans had a good idea what the Mediterranean and things of that nature look like. If we look at an ancient Greek map or an ancient Roman map of the Mediterranean and we compare it to a modern picture from a satellite of the Mediterranean, just because they look similar doesn't mean that the modern one is made up. And that is the logical conclusion they're trying to draw here. Because these two look so similar, it's made up. No, that just speaks volumes about the skill of the cartographers and the pain with which they took to do what they did.
Yeah, it again, as she stated, you can't make this shit up. You can't make it up. We they did a very good job at doing these things. This was this, even back then, what people were doing to try to travel out and trying to figure out what things were and how they are. So the state that we didn't know, we had a great idea of what things were.
Yeah.
And that just shows you how great, how, like you said, how good of a job they did at basically articulating these things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like, but created this picture. Now all of a sudden in 1997, they go see the Earth and it looked exactly like that picture.
Good job, cartographers.
No. Now, do y'all know who this man is? Probably not. But this is Richard E. Byrd. He was one of the first to discover Antarctica in 1928. See, he found evidence of the flat Earth.
Actually, he didn't discover Antarctica. We'd known about Antarctica. We have maps from a very long time ago showing Antarctica. She's wrong. She's wrong. She's wrong.
With the firmament over us. Even in his diaries and writings, he said it. See, he traveled all the way to the four corners of the earth. See, and when he found this discovery, what did our government do? They all went down to Antarctica 3 years later to claim a piece of it and to keep the truth hidden from us.
Except you can go there today, and that's not why they did that. All that they were doing was trying to do exactly what they did with the North Pole, and that was be the first country to drive a stake in there and say, we found the pole. And they sent cartographers over there, exactly like what we were just describing, to map out Antarctica as best as they could. This is the most cynical and strange perspective, because if all of these governments, again, were competing, which is what they were doing, then it would behoove them to expose each other's lies.
yeah, you would want to expose it, and it'll have been out in the open that, hey, these guys never did this. We did this.
Yep,
Like,
that's exactly right.
Everybody, even to this day, is still in a race to be the first.
Yes. Yes.
So why wouldn't they use that as a thing to gather or to put out there to make us look like we're, spewing like fallacies, like we're just lying, so they could make themselves look better.
Yes, and we can take even a very simple example of this, and that would be, of course, who invented the telephone. Was it Gray or was it Bell? And England to this day insists it was their guy. And to this day, we insist it was our guy. It was Bell, I swear. And we were friendly with England at this point. And we're still friendly with them. And still, the English say, nope, it was Gray. It was not Bell.
I mean, everybody's gonna pick whoever they pick. And
Right.
They're gonna pick the people on your side versus the people on that side. So
Right.
it is what it is.
That's exactly right. And the Japanese, they're not Christian. Yes, they have a Christian sect, and it is nutty as fuck. But they're not Christian. The Indians aren't Christian. The Chinese aren't Christian. In fact, the Chinese don't have any religion. So, officially, because they're communist. And the same is true with North Korea. I mean, I guess their leader is their religion in North Korea's case. The point being, there are plenty of governments that not only are they hostile toward us, they aren't Christian, and they would be one of the first to expose a Christian lie.
Are you talking about the Mr. Kim over there?
I am.
Yeah. Oh God. No. I mean, that is so bad. I'm just so happy I don't live over there. I wasn't born there. It is a mess over there. Oh man, he's just. So what happens when he dies? The next person is going to be their religion.
Yeah, well, and that's what's happened so far. And I guess, does he have kids now? I don't think he does. I know he had one lady he was seeing seriously, and he threw her to the curb horribly.
He's a joke.
Oh yes.
He's a joke.
Oh yes, 100%. But yeah, I guess I just don't. Even if you had a world, this is the other thing is, people who prescribe to this and similar ideologies, these dogmatic ideologies of conspiracy theories, most of them I don't think have ever really worked in the government, or at least not very long, because the government, and this is all governments, they're too large. They can't hold secrets to save their lives. I mean, hell,
No, I agree.
all you have to do is go to, what is it, War Thunder or whatever, that tank game, and you'll see secrets all over the damn place, because all these gamers argue, oh no, this tank doesn't have this range, this battleship doesn't have this range, or this speed, or this armament, or whatever, and so they're releasing classified material all the time. How could the government, all of these worldwide governments, go through and keep a secret like this? It's impossible. And like you said, though, but it doesn't even pass the logic test beyond the fact that there's no way you could keep something like this secret for long, just because her own logic claims that the entire thing, the entire earth, is covered by this firmament, and that means that there is an end to north, south, east, and west, except north because she has it sitting the way she does. But we can go to the South Pole. We can. Her pictures actually even argue against each other. We can get to some examples of that shortly.
Yeah.
That's why the Antarctica ice wall today is just like Area 51.
There isn't one ice wall. There are a bunch of ice walls. You can go see them. You can go around them.
She doesn't know that, though.
She doesn't know that.
I don't know why she keeps saying one, and we know that. I mean, you were even taught that there are more than one ice wall, so I don't get it.
Yeah.
Nobody could go there. Why is that? Are they hiding the truth? See, because that's what it seems like.
I will tell you, the way she just said that and the facial expressions she just said, she doesn't believe any of this.
No, I can tell. Like I said, I believe that she's doing this for publicity.
Mm-hmm. You know what? If she believed this so much, she can go prove it by sending a rocket up into the firmament. And, if it hits it and bounces off, then by golly, she'll have been right this whole time, but it won't. And she'll just find her rocket go into outer space.
We've seen the rockets on TV. When I was little, you could see the rocket go. Like, it's not like oh, wow. we had Photoshop and all this technology back then that you couldn't, like, remember we were talking about this? Like the movies, the
Yeah.
technology back then was not good.
Yeah.
You could tell when something was green screen or was cropped or whatever they tried to do. It
Just
was
watch the old
horrible.
Star Wars.
Yes, it was horrible. So you would know that this little cardboard is flying. Like, come on. Really?
She's never
We
seen Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know, they always do all those old movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see the
Man,
string?
yes. I kid you not. Like, we literally seen everybody for their own eyes seen the rocket, the spaceships go outer space.
Yeah.
They put it on national TV. You can see it.
Yeah.
So how the hell did we do that?
Yeah. We didn't have the
I'll wait.
technology.
I'll wait. You know, and then we're in space, and all of a sudden we green screen and all of this shit, or we're underwater, and then we put something behind it to make it look, and we're underwater floating around. Like, come on, my girl, are you serious?
I don't understand it. And as people who've watched our other stuff knows, I've actually worked on a lot of space technology. And there's nothing I could tell her that would make her believe that any of this was anything beyond a lie or some conspiracy. But having worked on space technology, first of all, Elon Musk is a liar when he says space is hard. That's just an excuse because he doesn't want to actually learn from the past. But space is an interesting topic, and when you start talking about making spacecraft, when you start talking about making life support systems for people out in space and things of that nature, it becomes very complicated very quickly. And there are a lot of things that you have to take into account. If all of this were fake, there would be no reason for me to have done what I did. There would be no reason for the satellites that I helped create to be out in orbit right now. And they are out in orbit right now, and they're doing exactly what we made them to do. And there certainly wouldn't be any reason to fabricate this convoluted notion of, okay, DaRon, you're making this space technology. Here are all the things you need to take into account. Here's all the physics and mathematics and all of this that you have to build into the rockets or build into the navigation system. And the communication system is going to have to worry about solar flares and worry about this and this and this. None of that would have happened. And it wouldn't have made any sense. This is all illogical.
No, I agree. It just, to me, you would think that if, like, a lot of the things that we have proven would be false.
Yeah.
And then we would have to question science, like, and math.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's why I go back to numbers don't lie. Like, in order to prove, science, you have, an educated guess, hypothesis, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But you also have to take that further and prove it using math.
Yes.
So without having that, having that proof, like, none of it makes sense. And as I'm saying, like, if she's stating that we haven't done any of these things, then I would have to go back and question the science, that we've proven. So I don't understand, like, how this equates to anything she's stating. Like, I don't get it. We've literally seen it with our own eyes.
Yeah.
Like, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. Why is all of these people working on these things then if we were never successful? Would the government, I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't still try, but would they have continuously spent all the money and effort to try to get out of space if we never been out there and never was not even successful at one bit?
And
If
would
we
other
kept hitting a
countries,
firmament,
right? And would other
yeah,
countries be trying and admitting that we did it?
right. Mm-hmm.
Now, on top of all this, I want to point out the other issue is if you had this firmament, by even her own pictures, that would mean that as you get to any of the extremes, the glass, as she describes it, would get closer and closer to the Earth, to the point where the reason why I bring this up is we use radio signals all the time. First and foremost, the radio signals would bounce off of the firmament and then come back and bounce, and you wouldn't see them dissipate the way they do. But importantly, how high up it is that they bounce off would be drastically different as you get closer to the edge, any of the edges. And that simply wouldn't be the case. That would mean that South Africa, for example, would get stronger radio signals further distances because it's bouncing off of that glass like this. Whereas as you reach toward the north, your radio signals would travel much shorter, since the firmament, by her own diagrams, is highest there. That means that that radio signal has to go further and would dissipate before it bounces. And each time the bounce would actually be less. There would be a greater distance between the bounces here on Earth, and it would dissipate further and further. There's so many logical fallacies involved and so many ways that you can actually disprove what she's doing. You as a layman, using a radio station, for example, using your own satellite, you can take your own balloons, send them up, and drop satellites off. People are doing that all over the place to do these, what do they call them, microsatellites or whatever?
Yep. Microsatellites, yep.
Yeah, she could do this herself. She could put a camera on it, attach a camera to a microsatellite. Hell, don't even do a microsatellite. Attach a camera to a balloon, fill it with helium, send it up, and let that camera prove that the Earth, in fact, isn't round, because that camera is going to show the exact opposite.
She doesn't want to do that.
No.
See, because my question is, how you gonna fly to the moon when God said he made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night? Meaning that the moon and the sun ain't even solid objects. They're luminary. You can't just go up there and land on it. Like, come on, bro. Everybody know that landing was fake. The flag up there waving. You could see a shadow on the moon.
She realizes that light was reflecting off the moon's surface. So light was coming from the sun, hitting the moon and reflecting. Just like light reflects off the Earth's surface. And so we get a shadow here on Earth. So there would be a shadow on the moon too. I mean, basic.
It's the light. Yeah.
I don't understand. The Bible didn't say that the moon was or wasn't solid. All it said was that it was a lesser light. She's making up this interpretation herself, which is, again, she's taking liberty, gross liberty with all of this. And you can't use the Bible to prove or disprove science like this, because it's not what it's there for.
Yeah, that's not the whole purpose of the Bible. And again, she doesn't understand what she's reading.
No, she doesn't.
And that's not what it's stating. It didn't say any of those things. It'd be different if the Bible said it was that it wasn't solid.
Yeah.
But it's not saying that.
Yeah.
It's talking about how it illuminates, like how it shines, like it's a difference.
And
that's
it is
what they
lesser.
saw. Yes. So, it's definitely lesser than the sun.
Yeah.
So we know that. And by far, who's landing on the sun?
Yes.
Who's landing on a ball of...
Right.
I mean...
At least she got that right. You can't land on the sun.
No. So, but to state that we didn't land on the moon, when there obviously a lot of data out there about us landing. And as you stated, if we didn't win our people who wants to be the first one to get there, the people that we're going against, wouldn't they want to state that? Wouldn't that be a win for them?
Oh yeah.
And if we didn't, wouldn't they have done it?
Yeah.
At some sort?
Yeah.
Everybody's at a race to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And to state that we never did, where's the proof?
Yeah. The Soviet Union, Cuba, North Korea, China, none of them would have gone with the lie. None of them. But this is all. India wouldn't have just celebrated that all of this is a gigantic joke. It makes no sense. And saying that it's a lesser light doesn't mean that it's solid or gaseous or not or whatever. All it means is that it's less light than, which happens to be the case because the moon is merely reflecting the light off of its surface back onto Earth, which is how you see it. which again is how everything works. I can see you because your body is reflecting light. Your shirt is reflecting less light than your body. Your shirt is absorbing light. But
Right.
that's
If I
physics, and
didn't
she
have
doesn't
any
understand
light,
that.
you wouldn't be able to see me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. If you absorbed all the light, like a black hole, I wouldn't be able to see you because you can't see a black hole. What you can see is the light around the
Yep.
horizon, but that's the best you can see. It's a black hole. That's why we have some material that reflects almost no light, and it's ridiculously black, absolutely positively insanely black. I mean, she doesn't understand the way this works. And I'll also point out we do have lunar soil. It it is nothing like anything you'll find on Earth. In fact, you cannot replicate it to a T, but we can replicate properties of it using ash and things of that nature from volcanic ash and things of that nature. But I bring that up to say, where did this soil, which each of these lunar missions brought soil back with them. So where did this soil come from that isn't from here? Or is that all made up, even though we have it and it exists in labs and different countries have it?
With any of the shit, if you go to these different, like, like even in the museums, they show different stuff. Like, you can't make it up.
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
And like you said, how the hell did meteorites
Yep. That's
get
exactly right.
here? Like, we have these different things. Like, for instance, what is it called? Darn it, it's moissanite, which is a meteorite. Like, that's what that is, and it forms into it. Well, they made it into some sort of diamond-like
Right.
object, but that's where it comes from. So how the hell did that get here if the firmament is above us? Like,
Right.
it makes no sense to me. Like, you have to start thinking about these things. We didn't just make this shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how did it get here?
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right.
Y'all talking about the stars as outer space, but in the videos and in the pictures, there's no stars in space.
It's the same reason why when you're in a city, you don't see many stars. In fact, depending on how bright the city is, you may see no stars because there's so much light around you. It washes this light pollution. It washes out all the stars in the sky. What she doesn't understand is the surface of the moon is very white and it's very bright and it's reflecting all of that light. Wow, that was beautiful.
Very light, very bright.
And it's reflecting all this light. I feel like I'm in kindergarten.
All this light.
So it's reflecting all of this light from the sun, and it's creating so much light pollution that it's very difficult to see the faint stars out there, any of the stars out there. Plus, they're all staring straight at the Earth. Now, when you see pictures of astronauts out and they're on the outer edge of our orbit, you can see stars and things of that nature reflecting off of their sun visors and so on and so forth. She's confused because she doesn't understand light pollution. Like I said, I go out into the city, I'm not going to see many stars. I, however, leave the city to where I don't have, and it's nighttime, to where I don't have so much light reflecting off of the ground or reflecting just from light sources around me. And all of a sudden, when I go to my parents who live in the country, so many stars. It's so beautiful. That's what she's not understanding is light pollution. And in this case, the light pollution is just from light reflecting off of the lunar surface.
See, because y'all going to have to do more than that to convince me. Because in Romans 3 and 4, God said, let Yah be the truth and every man a liar. But I know y'all going to ask me, Anaya, how do sunsets work if the earth is flat? See, in Job 9 and 7, God says, who commands the sun and it does not rise? See, on y'all.
Oh, she took that way out of context. Oh my goodness. I swear.
Does she understand how that works?
I don't think so. And I love Job, by the way. Job is one of my favorite stories. It's a brutal story. And it's a story that doesn't look good. They actually wanted to remove it because it doesn't look good. It makes God look bad in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
See, on y'all's globe Earth, y'all believe that the sun is setting and rising, but in reality, it's all just about perspective. For example, have y'all ever heard of a vanishing point? See, because in reality, the sun and the moon are not setting and rising, they are rotating.
This woman took an art
But
class and they told her about vanishing point and she didn't understand it.
here's the crazy part is I thought that it didn't move. Like Earth doesn't move, then why does the moon move? The moon rotating?
So she's going to say this and it's not going to make any sense. But let's see, because I wondered the same thing when she was talking, and then she gets to some graphics and they actually get really bad. But it tells me she hasn't traveled anywhere.
See, because the
I
farther that
agree.
it's getting away from us to rotate around the Earth, it's seeming as if it's going down.
So, according to this logic, the sun is actually moving further away from the Earth, and the sun and the moon both. I guess they take turns, even though they don't really. They move further away from the Earth. The problem with what she's saying is, so you know where we live, you can see the moon almost all day, right?
Yep.
Obviously, depending on what season it is, but almost all day. If I look up in the sky, I can see the moon. It's in different places, but I can see the moon. And that is because we're rather high off of the equator. If the sun and moon were getting further away, first of all, that wouldn't be the case. From our perspective, there's no logical reason why we would be able to see the moon based on what she's claiming, the way we see it. But the other thing is, if the sun is moving further away and it's moving across like this, then she's going to go through and claim that the sun and the moon are in the firmament. And that can't be the case based off her own claims. Because if they're in the firmament, they can't move further away from the firmament. The other thing is, if they're moving away, then how does it get back around?
Right. That it makes no sense at all. There's no way.
No.
That's why I'm stating that even the things that we have built with the satellites and all of these different things, there's no way that these things work in the way she's stating
Right.
if we're in a firmament. Like you could see these things, how would like they would be as clear as day.
Right.
And even with the sun and the moon, there's no way. Like, and then to think about how big you're talking about a planet here. How the hell is this going to fit in the firmament
Yeah.
without causing some type of collision?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way this big ass planet is inside of this firmament on Earth in the way that she's describing it, unless she's trying to say that the whole galaxy is in a firmament.
I was thinking the only way I could get around it is if you tried claiming the solar system were, but
Yep.
you're right, you'd have to expand it, and really you'd have to expand it even past the galaxy because we can
Yep.
see other galaxies.
Yep.
The other thing is her own diagrams actually conflict with each other because she had that diagram with the compass and all of this other stuff, and then she comes up and she's got this diagram and she's describing how there's this big wall of ice. I don't know why there'd be a big wall of ice, but a big wall of ice around everything. I think she's seen too much Game of Thrones.
She's seen too much games, period. Like, none of this shit is making sense. And
No.
then you, as you start to get deeper, you start to see her contradict herself constantly. And it's like, this doesn't make sense. Did you think this out before you tried to put this together? Because all of these things start to contradict herself after a while. After she goes into these different things, you're like, well, you just said this, now you're stating this again. If and here's my one point just on this whole Earth thing. If the Earth does not rotate and it's a planet, and then you say the moon rotates, I don't get it.
Right.
Like, then it's an assumption that if the Earth doesn't rotate, no other planet rotates.
Right. Why would the moon and the sun rotate? Why would the moon and sun be moving? How do they get back to the starting point? You also have the question about the equator, which we
Yep,
haven't
yep.
gotten to because she hasn't shown the one picture yet. But I've lived near the equator, and there is no such thing as daylight savings time because you get about 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of night at the equator all year, every year, because the equator is, for all intents and purposes, always in the same position relative to the sun.
Yep.
The problem is the way she's describing the setting and rising of the sun and the moon conflicts with all of this stuff. You can't have that happen at the equator. If that were the case, you also wouldn't get what you see, where you get the days of darkness in the north and things, and in the south. There's no logic here. None of this makes sense. That to say, oh well, it's a light and it's just moving like this, and so now you have this point, and that's why it works this way. But okay, how is it getting back here? And why is the equator always seeing the same amount of light? Why is it? And she has this
And the
graphic.
closer that it's getting from making its way back around to us, it seems as if it's rising.
But
This
she
doesn't
doesn't
make
understand that
sense.
it's because it's I mean, basically it's rotating on an axis.
Yeah.
And that's why it seems that the sun is rising and setting, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. It basically makes a complete turn every 24 hours.
Yes. Yes.
So like, I mean, that's the reason here. And that's again why she needs to have a foundation in science to understand. You can't go and state these things and not have evidence or proof to back it up. Because if you go and you guys can go and look this shit up
Yeah.
and find out that whatever she's saying is not right. It's not facts, and she's misconstruing everything because she,
Yeah.
her concepts are she's just got misconcept, like her concepts are just screwed up. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think she understands what it is. But then again we think that she may understand these things, but it's taking these things to prove a point
Yeah.
that she wants y'all to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I suspect a lot of this is for just for views, and you can conduct your own scientific experiments, and quickly all of this will fall apart. I don't even begin to understand. You can go to the equator, and all of this will fall apart. The
It's all
graphic
due to perspective from where
she's
we're
about
at.
to show will.
Disappears due to perspective. And here's another example. The line is tied perfectly even across the counter, and the bottles are sitting level on the countertop. Now let's look at it from the counterpoint view.
Yeah, that's just ignorant. I understand what they're trying to do, but you'll notice they have a big cardboard thing in the way, which is why you see it disappear. If this were flat, you wouldn't see that. It wouldn't look like that. If this were flat and I had those bottles, I would eventually get to the point where I'm now, in order to stare at the sun, I'm staring at the bottom of the bottles, not at the top of the bottles. And that's where she's trying to play a game with science. See, here's that thing that gets in the way. And that's why I'm still staring at the top. Whereas with this, it would have to go really far away for me to get to the point where this vanishes below that line.
Level on the countertop. Now let's look at it from the counterpoint view.
See, this is atrocious. This is the worst attempt at.
Okay, so y'all like, yeah, nah, I mean, that sound good. But how do seasons work then? See, what I need y'all to know is that
Here's
the sun
the
and the
one.
moon are actually closer than what they are telling y'all. The sun and the moon are inside the firmament.
So they don't experience gravity, apparently. And they're inside the firmament. Do you hear that? So she just said both the sun and moon are inside the firmament. If the sun and the moon are inside of the firmament, and all they are is a light, which is what she seems to think, they're like a flashlight, then we have a whole bunch of different problems. First and foremost, if all they are is a flashlight, then the sun wouldn't warm you.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. And okay, we're getting to the flashlight thing. Yeah, it wouldn't warm you, wouldn't do any of that. We probably wouldn't have any of the seasons either. But
Correct.
stating that if let's just go to the concept that if the sun was and it was not a flashlight, all the radiations and things that like we
Oh
would
yeah,
die.
we'd be toast.
There's no way. Like if we're just looking at any concept, the flashlight concept, and then the fact that if it was not a flashlight and it's in this ball, like it doesn't make sense. If you're going to state these things, you have to say why. You have to prove why we haven't either side.
Yeah.
You have to prove why we're not dead yet.
Yes, and
Because we would.
yes,
Yeah,
we would be dead. And this is where she is ignoring the fact that at the equator, so at the equatorial region, you get 12 hours a day, no matter what the season is. That is what she is ignoring because that throws everything off. She can't both explain how we have seasons in the north versus the south and at the same time explain the equator because it's not possible with the diagram she has here. And this diagram, I will point out yet again, actually conflicts with her prior diagrams and makes absolutely no sense.
Again, she should have looked at what she was presenting before to make sure that they all are consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them are consistent. So that's crazy. But again, the whole idea of this is to, state what is real and what is not, and give you guys some proof and evidence on why whatever she's presenting is not factual. And you can make up your own mind of what you think, but the data is out there.
Yeah.
There's no lie. You have seen the rockets go outer space. We have technology, we have satellites and stuff outer space. There's no way in hell that if we was in a ball and the sun and the moon was in here, that some of the things that we know is proven is real, that we wouldn't be alive. Me and DaRon wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. So a lot of the things that she's stating, she has no foundation in science or mathematical proof to back up her statements. And she might come on and say, well, where are you guys proof? And we will be showing things in the video, this episode, to show the different things of proof on why she's wrong here. But she may come back and rebuttal us. But again, she has proven nothing with these silly images.
Yes, that's true. The burden of proof is actually on her since she's the one making the claim in this case. And there's ample proof on our side. Like I said, I've already given several examples you can go through and do yourself today that will show you she's wrong. Today you can go take a trip, an expedition. Actually, you'll have to wait until it's October, November, but you can take an expedition over to the South Pole. Today you can go through and launch your own camera up on a balloon and see that the Earth is very clearly, very much not flat the way she's trying to describe. And to this day, you can pull out a compass and point out that the compass points both north and south because, of course, magnetism is duo pole, so bipole. But
well, either way, this concludes our episode for today. I'm Roniel.
I'm DaRon.
And if you haven't already, please comment, like, subscribe for more episodes like this one. And we will be having a part 2 on this firmament and this stuff that she's basically talking about or misconstruing or misconcepts and different stuff like that. Yeah, it's horrible. So we will have a part 2. So be on the lookout for that one. And until the next time,
have fun. Yeah, this actually bothered me the whole time when I was watching her, especially because the way she's talking. She's trying to do that minister voice. And I know you caught on to that immediately.
Yeah.
And I actually find that very bothersome because when I hear people take up that voice, it usually tells me what they're about to tell me is a lie or something of that nature. It's that I want to dominate you verbally, not with logic or anything like that, but through tone and inflection. That's what she's doing the whole time.